Hi, friends. It's Deanna Williston with Our Blooming Catholic Life. And I want to say right now, this is a book review. This is not easy to review. It is not easy to read. It was probably not easy to write, and harder still for the millions of people whose lives are recorded in this book. What book am I talking about? Kolbe and the Kommandant, Two Worlds in Collision. It is by Ladislaus Klutz, OCD. It has been translated by Sister M. Angela Santor, SSJ, TOSF, MA. It is published by Marytown Press, and that's out of Marytown in Libertyville, Illinois. You know I love it there. You can watch their Perpetual Adoration. You can find them on YouTube as Kolbe Shrine. But if you want to buy the book, you can find it at marytowngiftshop.com. If you're in the U.S., you can call 1-800-743-1177. When I purchased the book, it was right around $16. I don't know what it is now. It's heavy, which is weird because it feels heavier than it should. And maybe that's because I know what the contents are inside. I will say there's a photos section in the back. Those are photos that are after the death of Kolbe. The photos from during wartime, they are interspersed within childhood on through. Any of the earlier photos are worked their way through. The ones while the men were alive, those photos are interspersed in the text. It's like, do I have to do this? Yes, I do. So the Nihil Obstat is by the Reverend Robert J. O'Donnell, Censor Deputatis Imprimatur by Most Reverend Eldon F. Curtis, Bishop of Helena, Montana, USA, in November 8th, 1982. The first printing was in May 1983. This edition was updated for 2018, and it was printed in the USA. It is dedicated to the martyrs of the Auschwitz concentration camp. And here it has the verses from Matthew 16. And Jesus said to his disciples, If any man will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For he that will save his life shall lose it, and he that shall lose his life for my sake shall find it. For what doth it profit a man if he gain the whole world, and suffer the loss of his own soul? Or what exchange shall a man give for his soul? For the Son of Man shall come in glory of his Father with his angels, and then he will render to every man according to his works. Amen, I say to you, there are some of them that stand here that shall not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. And I want you to take those first two lines there. Then Jesus said to his disciples, If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For he that will save his life shall lose it, and he that shall lose his life for my sake shall find it. Right there, you can go probably a little bit further, but that's going to summarize the book. I'll show you how it's set up, and then I think you're going to understand. The contents say why this book, and it's pretty self-explanatory after that, because here we have time periods, right? But in them we have a chapter on Kolbe, followed by a chapter on the Kommandant of Auschwitz. You can see they both started out as altar boys. The first one went from an altar boy to a Franciscan friar and a spiritual mother to so many around the world. But the other one doesn't say how he ends up except betrayed. And that sets the tone for the rest of the book. That really, I think it really does. So we look at those comments. A student challenges Satan, a war and a baptism of fire, beginning the battle for souls, the lure of Hitler and Nazism. At any point in these time periods, you see the choices they make. These aren't just their choices. These are the choices that millions were making during this time. A spiritual army grows and bears fruit. A prison sentence for murder. Implanting God's kingdom in Japan and India. From farm to SS candidate. An explosion of divine love and power in Europe. Brutal training of an SS stormtrooper. The Nazi war machine collides with truth and love. The making of an executioner. Love is consummated in the Holocaust. The Death Factory and its architect. And then from 1942 to 1945, 1946 to 1947, those two periods, we only have chapters on the Kommandant. And then 1948 to 1970, we have a bright, glorious figure bursts forth in Kolbe and his fatal error on the Kommandant. 71 to 1982, we have His Victory Deepens and Spreads, and that's a chapter on Kolbe. Appendix A is the Commandant's farewell letters. Appendix B is the beatification of Maximilian Kolbe and the text of some of his significant homilies. Appendix C is Pope John Paul II with the meaning of Maximilian Kolbe's heroic death and canonization. Appendix D is a man who knew Maximilian Kolbe. And the last, I already told you about that photo section well after Kolbe has passed. I think you can easily see why this book, we don't need to read that together. They are both young men who decided upon military careers. They were both altar servers. They both decided on military careers. In this time between the wars, and there was so much horrific things going on in Europe in this time. So much sadness and depression and poverty. And it's how we react to the challenges of our time, how we submit our will to the will of God. And we know that's an important lesson in Maximilian Kolbe that is included in this book. The publisher's note for the second edition. It says, for greater accuracy of the quotes from St. Maximilian's writings and letters used in Kolbe and the Kommandant, I have substituted the wording as found in the two-volume work, The Writings of St. Maximilian Maria Kolbe, Volume 1 Letters, Volume 2 Various Writings. The number after the Volume 1 or 2 in each quote refers to the number of the particular writing for that volume, and that is the revision editor, Brother Charles Madden, OFM Conventional. The introduction here is by Father Bernard M. Geiger, OFM Conventional, and there is a letter in the back that's also addressed to him, I believe. Let's just go ahead and read perhaps just a few little paragraphs from each of the introductions, and then we'll jump in further in the book. You can see I have not finished this book. By this time, and it's a little misleading looking at this end because of the dog ears in the book, so there you have the sections. By this time, Maximilian Kolbe has died and the Kommandant has been captured. What is this section after here? Now, a good bit of this, wait, let's stop and look. How much of this is appendix? Oh, a decent amount of this is appendix. I'm already in appendix A. So probably equal amounts of the book left as well as the appendix. Okay, I feel a little better there myself. I'm like, this is going to be ugly reading that much on the Commandant because the next section on him is arrest, trial, and final repentance. Ooh, final repentance, a note of hope. Anyway, let's go back to the beginning. The period known as 1894 to 1913, altar boy to Franciscan friar, and this is on St. Maximilian Kolbe. On January 8th, 1894, and pardon my Polish, Śląska Wola, Poland, a son, Raymond, was born in the home of Julius Kolbe. The attractive mother, Maria Kolbe, née Dabrowska, held the precious treasure most tenderly in her arms. Little son, what will become of you as you grow up? She asked the question that penetrates each mother's heart as soon as the trauma of childbirth has passed. In reply, little Raymond, without opening his eyes, murmured something unintelligibly, while visiting neighbors hastened to add, he will positively be a priest, they predicted. That's just what he will not be, interjected the father to the excited women. Francis, my oldest son, will be a priest, and this son will probably be a weaver like his parents. We can't afford to educate two sons to the priesthood. After the neighbors departed and the children were fast asleep, Maria confided to her husband, when I was a young girl, I frequently dreamed of entering a convent. Unfortunately, here in the Congress Kingdom, that is the part of Poland partitioned after the Congress of Vienna in 1815, the Roman authorities suppressed all convents. This repression in 1863 was for the cooperating with the January insurrection. I was therefore forced to change the plans for my life. Then I began to pray most fervently for a husband who would neither curse, drink, or spend his time in taverns. God gave me you, Julius, and you are the type I dreamed of and desired. If you keep praising me like that, you're going to spoil me, teased Julius. The Kolbe parents worked very hard for a living. They were self-employed in their cottage, as was customary in Lodz and the region around it. They wove cloth from the yarn distributed to them by the warehouses of private factories. The completed material was then taken to foreign owners of the factories, who paid them. Since there were no labor law regulating payment for such work, the wages were hardly enough for food and clothing. The Kolbe family had only one large room in which to live. In one corner stood a large kitchen stove, in another 4 looms for weaving, and behind a partition was the sleeping area. In a niche between the cupboards on a small table stood a little statue of the Blessed Mother amid tiny angels and candle holders. Before this little altar, the family began and ended each day with fervent prayer. Julius with a journeyman and 2 apprentices labored at the looms for 12 hours a day. Seeking a better livelihood, Julius moved with his family to Lotz, and shortly after then to Pabiani's, where besides his regular workshop he opened a small business. After a time he discontinued his work as a weaver and contented himself with the management of the store. His wife became a midwife. Through the years 3 more sons were born, but only one, Joseph, survived. The other 2 died in infancy. Although many years passed, Francis, the eldest son, as well as Raymond, did not attend any school. There were no Polish schools during the Russian occupation. The parents resented the ideas of having their children Russianized, and so they themselves began to teach their children reading, writing, and the basics of mathematics. The remaining studies were completed through the efforts of the Polish priests of Pabiani's, who gave whatever time they had to the education of the children and the youth in Poland. In spite of these rather weak beginnings, Francis passed his examination in a trade school, and the only secondary school in the town. Meanwhile, little Raymond, who from his earliest years gave evidence of a mathematical genius, helped in his parents' business. I'll leave you you're like, wait, how did he become St. Maximilian Kolbe? I'm not going to tell you there, but his mother sent him on a very important errand. What was it? He had to take a prescription to the pharmacist. And then something very interesting happened. Let's go to the beginnings. 1894 to 1913, an altar boy betrayed, and this is on the Kommandant. On November 25, 1900, in Baden-Baden, Germany, great rejoicing prevailed in the home of Franz Xavier Haas. His wife, Pauline Haas, née Speck, gave birth on this day to her first son. With great joy and pride, the father was showing his son to relatives, and friends gathered there to congratulate the proud parents of the plump, blue-eyed blonde with a roguish smile. A beautiful child, the delighted women loudly declared. He will be a valiant soldier, predicted the men. He will definitely not be a soldier, responded the father vehemently. Incredible, responded the amazed friends of France. Yet whole generations of your ancestors served in the army, bringing glory to the German army. Didn't your father, a colonel, die in a heroic battle with the French in 1870? And didn't you serve as an officer in the colonial army? Fight valiantly in the German Southeast Africa. Has your wife influenced you so much in her business enterprise that you now desire to have your son a merchant? Leave the commercial business to the English. Our German nation is above all a nation of soldiers. We are created to fight and rule over the whole world. My son, replied Franz emphatically, will neither be a soldier nor a merchant. He will be a priest. A priest? Questioned the guests, quite astonished at this announcement. Yes, the master of the house decidedly answered. He will be a missionary priest. He will go to Africa, not with a carbine, but the gospel, the good tidings which announce that God is the Father not only of the whites but also of the blacks, and that we are all brothers, members of the one human family. Further conversation was somehow stinted. Under various pretexts, the guests began to leave, musing over what had passed. And you, Paula, do you agree that our first son shall become a priest? Franz tenderly questioned his wife. Oh, would to God he did become one, whispered the pale, exhausted mother of little Rudolph, who slept peacefully in her arms. For the health of their children, the Haas family moved into a country house beyond Baden-Baden. In the neighboring area, and even farther, they found only a few people engaged in agriculture. On the other hand, a neat stand of tall fir trees began near by in the Black Forest. Little Rudolph was not fond of playing with his younger sisters. Neither did he have any playmates his age, for all the neighboring children were much older than he was. As a result, he associated with older persons unsuited to his age. This resulted in a withdrawal into solitude. Whenever he could break away from his mother, he secluded himself in the forest. During one such escapade, he was carried off by wandering gypsies. Fortunately, a neighbor passing by caught sight of the boy struggling with his hands and feet to get away from gypsies and managed to rescue him. Most of this time, however, was spent in grooming horses. He loved horses. For hours at a time he caressed them, talked to them most tenderly, and fed them with sweets. Whenever he found a cleaning tool, he immediately brushed the horse and combed its hair. The stable masters observed with consternation how little Rudy coolly slipped between the horse's feet, and how he played with a strong and ferocious bull, which was the terror of the whole vicinity. Similarly, he befriended all the dogs in the neighborhood. Under his mere glance they would become as docile as lambs. The parents, particularly the mother, were disturbed by the son's behavior. What will become of him when he grows up? She consulted with her husband. He avoids people, and he won't talk with anyone or play with his sisters. He is interested only in solitary jaunts and is too fond of animals. We will have to move to a neighborhood where there are no domestic animals, decided Franz. On this account, the family moved into the vicinity of Mannheim. This place, too, was beyond the town. However, nearby lived a few families having quite a group of children of Rudolf's age. His parents realized soon enough they had made a mistake. 7-year-old Rudy, instead of joining his playmates, hid himself in the corners of the home, cried quietly, or would sit and brood for hours. "What are you thinking of for so long?" inquired his troubled mother. Rudy was silent. One day his mother noticed a book in his hands which he was examining most passionately. At an opportune time the mother looked through the book and was much surprised to find it filled with animal illustrations. Weeks passed and Rudy continued his silence. He refused to eat and play. After long deliberation the parents made a decision. For his 7th birthday they presented him with a wonderful pony named Hans, black as coal, with a long mane and large glistening eyes. Rudolf was overwhelmed with joy. Instantly all melancholy left him. He jumped on his pony and rode into the nearby woods. He returned after a few hours, tired but beaming with joy. "Thank you, dearest parents, thank you." He kissed their hands for their thoughtfulness. Rudy never left his pony. Whenever his parents were not at home, he led his pony into his room. Hans gratefully reciprocated with an attachment to him. He walked after Rudy step by step like a pet dog. From the year 1906, Rudolf began to attend the elementary school in Mannheim. He was attentive in school and behaved very well. After returning from school, he did his homework quickly in order to have leisure time with Hans. While the family lived in Baden-Baden, the father was away on business very frequently. Now at Mannheim, he had ample time to devote to his son. He questioned him and checked his homework. Evenings were spent chatting with his son. He related his army experiences from service in East Africa, the combat, the injuries he received in battle, his distinguished awards which brought him promotions and finally the rank of major. He also related the untiring activities of missionary orders, of those courageous persons and habits who tread into every corner of Africa without arms and ammunition, but with the cross of Christ, with charity and civilization. These talks awakened in the child a desire to become either a valiant soldier like his father or a missionary. The latter aspiration was becoming stronger in him, particularly at the time when the family was visited by certain guests, bearded priests from Africa, old friends of the father, who presented to the boy's imagination a most attractive image of their humanitarian and religious activities. Rudy could listen for hours to their stories. These were the only moments during which he was lost to the world, even to his pet pony. "Daddy," he exclaimed to his father after such meetings, "I shall be a missionary." "I am extremely happy for you. But, dear son, you must pray much and fervently for perseverance in that vocation. We shall therefore make a pilgrimage to Lourdes to plead with the Immaculate Mother for protection over you and your calling." Finding themselves before the grotto at the Lourdes, Rudolf observed tears falling down his father's eyes. They were rather unbecoming to the masculine and soldierly face of a mature person. Rudolf, troubled about it, clung to his father. "Daddy," whispered Rudy, "why are you crying?" "Dearest son, a strange uneasiness about you filled my heart. I don't know how to explain that. I'm begging the Blessed Mother that you become a noble-minded man." I'll leave that sit for you, friends. Let's go ahead and jump. What are the things that I have marked? I just loved some of the passages, like on page 58. Father Maximilian celebrated his first Mass in the new chapel on November 17, 1927. The brothers, together with God's people, knelt on bare ground in tribute to the birth of Christ on the altar, just as the shepherds did in the stable at Bethlehem. Here he was talking a lot about building the printing presses. It's just so lovely. While they talk about that as their work, they remember that their responsibility is to God in prayer and doing whatever God's will is. You really see his fatherly, motherly heart as he nurtures the young friars, both going back and forth from Poland to Japan, his illnesses that follow him, as well as we see quite horrible things that happen to the young man who becomes the Kommandant. Quite horrible things. And every time he thinks, "Oh, I'll get to work on a farm. This will be lovely." And suddenly the farm, experimental farm, turns out to be really a concentration camp where he's going to be asked to exterminate millions of people, and not just exterminate them, get rid of all evidence of them. How he's expected to do more with less, less people to help, by which I mean they would hire the cruelest of the prisoners to be over other prisoners. the atrocities that happen. It's it's awful. And the sadness of what happens to the friars time and time again of St. Maximilian's illness and how he goes on, the struggle of letting the young friars go, the joy of calling them back. It's definitely an emotional roller coaster. It is one that is worth it. It's very interesting. This is a chapter on the Kommandant on page 139. Note that there are occasionally typos or missing text. Page 138 just ends mid-sentence and it doesn't make sense. There's a couple paragraphs there that have an issue. But we're on page 139. This is in the Making of an Executioner. Let's see here. Where was it? It starts on 138. Among the so-called special prisoners was a Lutheran pastor, Martin Niemöller, who during World War I was the commander of a submarine. This greatly interested Haas. Niemöller was arrested for his sermons in which he called upon the people to oppose Hitler and his totalitarian system. Hitler himself was interested in inducing this courageous pastor to renounce his opposition. With this in mind, prominent personalities such as Admiral Lanz visited him, but all was in vain. Niemöller stood his ground in spite of everything, and persisted in his principles, declaring that no state had any right to interfere in the internal laws of the Church, and more so to issue such orders. The pastor's wife, in her letters to him, encouraged her husband to persevere in his convictions for the good of the Church and Germany itself. Haas, not only from duty but from curiosity, read all the correspondence of the pastor, and listened attentively to the conversations carried on during visiting hours. It was as early as 1938 that he wrote to the Commander-in-Chief of the Navy, Admiral Raeder, that he was resigning from the right to wear a Navy officer's uniform because it did not conform to the ideals with which the Navy should serve. Haas frequently talked personally with the pastor. These talks greatly intrigued him. Niemöller declared openly that God must be obeyed first and then the people. The two agreed when it came to the discussion of many topics. When, however, their conversation came to religious and church matters, Niemöller became unyielding. Hopefully, said the pastor, the present suffering of Catholic priests and Lutheran pastors will hasten the hour of uniting all Christians into one family of God. Something to think about that. The present suffering of all those priests and pastors. And here we have on page 141, 1940 to 1941, love is consummated in the Holocaust. Kolbe. More and more often the friars heard Maximilian repeat, God is my love. Let us love him with our whole heart. Let us love the Immaculata. Let us love our enemies. One of the friars remarked to one another, it just occurred to me that Father Maximilian will not live long. How do you know? Reading the lives of the saints, I was impressed that each one of them, shortly before death, spoke only of love. And what does our guardian speak of? In the morning hours of February 17, 1941, Maximilian dictated his last article on the Immaculata to Brother Arnold Wodrowski. It contained the whole credo of Father Kolbe. Immaculate Conception. These words came forth from the lips of the Immaculata. Therefore, they must point out most accurately and realistically who she is. If in general human words are not fit to express divine things, so here too the meaning of those words must be much deeper, more beautiful, and more sublime than the things which they generally express, or the recognition of which reason alone, even though most penetrating, could carry into effect. This is one of the dog-eared passages, and they do take the time. They give us several more pages of this beautiful writing of Father Maximilian Kolbe. It is included, however, with photos of him being captured, where he was taken, and the treatment he received. There is a fairly graphic drawing on page 153, just so you know. What to tell you, friends? It is important to read it, to ponder, to beg Our Lady to take the sacrifice of these holy men and use for it some great good. Perhaps the great good was already accomplished in the defeat of the German army, but there are many wars and many sacrifices going on in our own time. And perhaps we need to reflect on that in St. Maximilian Kolbe's words and love and really think about how much we really truly pray for those in the world and how much we spend on ourselves. I don't know. There's so much to think about. It is a great book to read before bed. I do tend to try and look for a grain of hope, usually with a chapter on Maximilian Kolbe. It is a struggle. But also I will say, you saw all the dog ears. There's tons of writing inside, things that I'm picking up, things I want to look up later. I do believe there are citations throughout, so there must be footnotes. Are there footnotes? Or are things just cited in the text? I'm trying to see now. I think most of the things are just in the text itself that they tell you where it's from. I'm not seeing footnotes. But you do get the citations. We already discussed that. Yes. So no real footnotes, no notes at the end, but again, there are those appendixes as well. Friends, it's a really great book. It's a challenging book. And again, there are typos and some things here and there scattered throughout that cause you perhaps to pause a little bit. But also, I think it's partly because of it being translated. Sometimes the word order is a little bit awkward. I think that some of it, it's just here and there. It's not all the time, but every now and then you read it and you stumble over it a little bit, and it's just because it was not written in English. So it's just a little bit off in the translation. It's not the smoothest, but it's not the easiest topic either. So sometimes you may need to read a passage once or twice. It doesn't happen that often. It is worth noting, though. It's not you. It is a translation. It's just good to know that. Friends, I'm going to go ahead and leave you to read this book. Consider reading it. Again, it's just interesting at the choices we make and the choices that are made by those who love us, how things end up. It's just there before the grace of God go I. Amen.